Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be recapping our reviews from the month of September 2024. This video will feature three things: a discussion of our favorite coffee this month, as well as any honorable mentions, our upcoming coffee of the month, and anything else pertaining to this channel that we feel is worth discussing or addressing. So let's go ahead and get started with our honorable mentions. And as always, these are in order of when we reviewed them on this channel. And first up, we have the Alaska del Sur, the wash processed Ecuador from The Picky Chemist, based out of Choefontein, Belgium. And upon reflection, I do feel like this was my favorite of the three Picky Chemist coffees that we had recently reviewed, as I did go back and brew all three of those coffees after their reviews, and found myself enjoying this one the most due to its clarity and higher than anticipated intensity. As up to this moment, I've typically preferred the Picky Chemist's more processed offerings, as they do have much more intensity while not sacrificing too much of the clarity. So having one of their wash processed offerings turn out as intense as this one was definitely quite enjoyable. And as a result, I do feel like this is probably my favorite of the Picky Chemist coffees that we've reviewed up to this point. Unfortunately, this coffee is no longer available for purchase, as it did sell out within the first 10 minutes of it being available. And while we are on that topic, none of the coffees that we're discussing in this video are still available for purchase, with the exception of our coffee of the month, but we'll get to that later. Next up, we have the Jose Hijón and Francisco Ventimilla wash processed Ecuador from September Coffee Company out of Ottawa, Ontario. And on paper, this was always my type of coffee, as it is a wash processed mejorado from the son of arguably my favorite producer in the entire world, Jose Hijón, of course being the son of Pepe Hijón. And the fact that it did come from one of my favorite North American and Canadian based coffee roasters in September, so it's unsurprising that this one did turn out as nice as I had expected, though truth be told, there was a little bit of a learning curve on this one, as this was the first time we had ever reviewed one of September's extra light offerings, and it definitely did take a little bit of adjustment, as I felt like the best of this coffee definitely came after an extended rest. But when it did come, it was definitely a very enjoyable experience, as it offered everything I was looking for from this coffee, which of course is a very high level of sweetness given that it is a mejorado. So as of this moment, this is one of my favorite coffees that we have reviewed from September, as I do feel like they did a very good job with this one, and I'm definitely curious to explore some more of their extra light offerings in the future. All right, next up we have the Kaa, the wash processed Kenya from Father's Coffee Roastery, based out of Ostrava, Czech Republic. And we did have to include one non-Ecuadorian coffee in this recap, as this one right here was definitely nicer than expected for a Kenyan coffee, as in the past I've had some mixed results with Father's, as some of their coffees have been extremely nice, while others have been just okay for the most part. And this is one of the coffees that we've reviewed from them since they've made the transition to Loring, and it's very nice to see a comment on that, as yes, I very much enjoyed this coffee despite the fact that Father's had switched over their roasting machine to a Loring, which does go to show that sometimes coffee roasters that do make the transition can do a very nice job with their coffee still, as is the case with this coffee roaster, and also September, who did transition to Loring after an initial start with a different coffee roasting machine. But one of the main reasons I did want to highlight this coffee is because this one was one of the more enjoyable Kenyan coffees that I have had this year, and while I don't think it's going to end up on our top 10 coffees of the year list, I think it did set a little bit of the benchmark for Kenyan coffees that we are going to be reviewing this season by having it turn out a little bit more sweet than initially expected going into it. So it'll definitely be interesting to compare some of the Kenyan coffees that we do have coming up to this one as well. All right, and that takes us to my favorite coffee this month, and this one will be no surprise to anybody that watched the review. It is the La Papaya Gesha wash processed Ecuador from H&S Coffee Roasters out of Laramie, Wyoming. And it doesn't want to stand. There we go. Perfect. And this one right here hit every mark that I was looking for within this coffee, as it offered a level 5 for the clarity and sweetness, two of the most important factors, at the same time offering a very high level of florality and a wonderful level of fruit-forward profiles to it as well. So this one hit on the big four in tremendous manner, as this one right here is one of the most enjoyable coffees I've had this year. It is a very strong contender for my favorite coffee of the entire year, and is probably a very strong favorite to finish at worst in in the top 5, as everything about this coffee was really impressive right from the onset, as I found this one having so much potential when first starting it, only to find it turn out significantly better than I could have ever expected. And H&S is a coffee roaster that I definitely have my eye on, as we do have a lot more reviews from H&S coming up. In fact, we had a couple of reviews from H&S that could have ended up being on our honorable mentions list this month, as I did enjoy the Bolivian coffee as well as the Deborah Bourbon, the Panamanian coffee. But keep an eye out for our iridescence review, which is coming out next week, as that was a truly special coffee. And I've also recorded a blind taste test featuring the DNA altered coffees from H&S as well, that will be coming out sometime here in the near future. I did want to get my initial reaction to the pizza and gochujang coffees recorded, so that will be a very interesting video when it does come out, and of course we will be reviewing those coffees as well. But for right now, this one right here was a truly spectacular coffee. All right, and that takes us to our upcoming coffee of the month, and that is the Ki-AA, the wash processed Kenya from Min-Max by BK. And this one's going to be a pretty fun one to discuss, as I'm sure a lot of people that maybe aren't into the indie coffee scene were probably scratching their heads when they saw this coffee featured in our coffee of the month poll, and were probably more perplexed when they saw this coffee win in a little bit of a landslide on both polls in our coffee of the month polls, as it was up against some pretty heavy hitters, including September, Square Mile, and Manhattan. And the quick backstory, we'll probably go into it a lot more into the reviews maybe in the future, but Min-Max is a coffee roaster that is, I want to say, about as small as it gets. I do believe it is just one person with some assistance from maybe some other people, but for the most part, it is just a one-man operation. And the one man that is in charge of this operation is somebody that I actually met at a coffee shop long before they ever started roasting, as we did have a pretty extensive discussion when we did meet for that first time. And it was very interesting to me when I found out that he had purchased a coffee roasting machine, and then it was interesting to me when I found out that he was going to be selling his coffee. But here's the first thing I wanted to say about it. When I found out that this person had actually started roasting, I did want to give them a little bit of a grace period, as that's usually what I like to do with brand new coffee roasters. So when September first came out, I did want to give it a little bit of a waiting period to kind of see the reaction and feedback that a lot of people had. Same thing with Prodigal, and that was kind of the experience I had with Min-Max, is I wanted to kind of sit back and wait to hear what a lot of people felt about this coffee roaster before reviewing them. But I feel like Min-Max was kind of thrust into the spotlight because so many people did want to see us review them and get some reactions to it. If you watched any of our live streams, we have received a lot of requests to review Min-Max. So we were going through Min-Max's website on multiple occasions, and we went through it one more time, as it did fit with our theme this month, which was, of course, Kenyan coffees roasted on 4 different roasting machines, this one being the Stronghold, and it ended up winning that coffee of the month poll. So for all of those reasons, it's going to be a pretty interesting review. So we did opt to pick up the French roast of this one, and once again, for people that maybe aren't familiar with this coffee roaster, that is actually supposed to be a profile that is lighter than what they have identified as the Nordic roast, which is counter to a lot of people's thoughts on these coffee roasters in general, as a lot of people hear French roast and assume that it's going to be significantly more developed, but this is actually quite the opposite, as this is supposed to be some of the lightest roasted coffees in the entirety of the United States, as Min-Max does take a lot of inspiration from Substance, which is of course a coffee roaster based out of France, and one that hopefully we should be reviewing here in the near future, and also the Picky Chemist, which are 2 of the lightest roasting coffee roasters in the entirety of Europe. So this one right here, once again, is supposed to be a super ultra light coffee. This one is still available for purchase. Min-Max does have some interesting coffees on their website right now if you did want to purchase from them, because these will be some slightly different reviews, and I did want to give people a little bit of a cautionary tale going into it, that these are going to be some extremely lightly profiled coffees. Right. Final thing worth discussing in this video, and this is just something I wanted to touch on briefly. So Airworks is actually going to be bringing in Bell Lane from Mullingar, Ireland, and that is a coffee roaster that has featured on our channel a little bit recently, as we did have one review, probably still my favorite Colombian coffee that we've reviewed this year up to this point, the Johan Vergara. And in addition to that, we did a blind taste test featuring a number of their coffees, and I really enjoyed those coffees. I really wanted to highlight that being featured from Airworks because it is a coffee roaster that I very much enjoyed. And when purchasing from them, the shipping was a little steep, so having a coffee company like Airworks bring in this coffee roaster definitely gives a lot of people an opportunity to try them out for the first time. So I just wanted to highlight that, as I'm sure a lot of people were maybe curious about trying this coffee roaster given our very positive reviews of them. So I wanted to bring that to the forefront and a lot of people's attention, as Airworks has been doing a wonderful job. They've certainly helped hook us up with some very hard to obtain coffees that we are going to be reviewing here in the near future. We're actually going to be featuring a lot of coffees that we picked up from Airworks here within the next month. So definitely stay tuned for all of those. But I feel like that is how I'm going to leave this video. As I always say, if you guys are enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But this right here has been a recap of our reviews in the month of September 2024. Thank you for watching.